My parents revealed a 19-year-old secret to save my relationship. I, 18 female, turning 19 next month, have been dating my boyfriend, 19 male, for almost 2 years now. Everything has been going great. We got emancipated and now own an apartment in the outside of a very small town and are soon to open a car wash together. Last week, we were at a family reunion where the topic of my late grandmother, dad's side, was brought up, and my father pulled out some pictures of her. My mother-in-law, I will be referring to my boyfriend's mother that way, freaked out and looked super nervous when she saw pictures of my grandma. Then she left the room for a few minutes while the topic continued. She later came back with pictures of my and my boyfriend's grandmothers, both unalive right now, together. The pictures led all the way to their late teens and early 20s, right before my dad was born. Apparently, my great-grandfather had an affair where he had my boyfriend's grandmother. And since my grandma was the oldest, she knew about it apparently. They were raised separately, but were still related. My grandma and her dad kept this secret from the rest of the family. At least, that is why we think no one else knew. So, the math started. Our grandmas were sisters. That makes my dad and his mom, my boyfriend's mom, direct cousins. And me and my boyfriend would be second cousins. Obviously, me and my boyfriend started to cry. I started to have a panic attack, and my mother-in-law was still in what looked like shock, but my parents seemed so calm. Eventually, my dad snapped. Quote, all right, we need to say something. You can all calm down. Blank is not my biological daughter. They're okay to date. You're fine. My name, like in parentheses. I stopped crying, but only for a second. Then I continued, but this time yelling, what the fuck, over and over. Still to this day, those 3 words keep repeating in my mind. Their story was that my mom and dad dated in college, then broke up, then a few years later they reunited. My mom was 5 months pregnant when they decided to give it a try, with him promising her to give me his last name and care for me, which he's done a great job at. He was the one to sign my birth certificate, making me unrelated by blood to him, therefore unrelated by blood to my boyfriend. But my mom didn't want people to know that I wasn't really his, so she made him keep the secret for 19 years.
My girlfriend doesn't know I speak Japanese. She spoke it thinking I didn't understand. About 6 months ago I met this wonderful Japanese girl in uni. She had attended an international school in Japan and her dad had worked in the US for 20 years, so she maintained native level English and was able to study abroad here in the US very easily. Anyway, we hit it off really well and have a ton of things in common and became very close over the past few months. We often hang out at each other's places to watch anime or play video games, but so far it has been a very friendly and platonic relationship. Recently, I've begun to develop feelings for her, but I haven't really been able to muster up the courage to ask her out yet. I've been shot down several times in the past, so I've been very hesitant to going through confessions and heartbreak all over again. What I didn't tell her was that I had been learning Japanese on and off for about 6 years now. I'm very self-conscious and unconfident about my abilities, and the topic of me speaking Japanese never really came up, so I never mentioned it. I'm not exactly fluent, but I can understand a fair bit, and even though my speaking skills aren't very good, I can get around Japan perfectly fine, having spent a month there for travel. I also scanlate, provide free translations online, for manga on the side every once in a while to keep my language skills up, but I never really told her about it either. A few weeks ago we were watching together when she had to take a call from her mother and excused herself to the kitchen to speak with her. I decided to play around on my phone while waiting, but I couldn't help but overhear the conversation she had with her. Based on her responses, her mother was essentially teasing her for me being her boyfriend and why she hasn't asked me out yet. I overheard her say something along the lines of, I want to confess but I don't want to get rejected. I'm still thinking about when and how I'm going to do it. Naturally I became very excited. I tried to keep a straight face and not ask about it, but my heart was beating out of my chest at that very moment. I didn't want to pry and decided to just wait until she would just bring it up naturally when she's ready. Later on, she mentioned that her mother would be coming into town on a Saturday to bring some stuff over. We are usually at each other's places every weekend for a brief period of time just to get caught up with the latest anime episode. Last weekend was the premiere of a new season for an anime called Kaguya-sama Love is War, which we had planned to watch together. I told her no worries, I will just be in and out of her place so that I don't intrude on her family time. While watching the episode at her place, her mother ended up coming in early, so I had no choice but to say hi. I don't really know what came over me, but when her mother introduced herself to me in Japanese, I also responded back in Japanese. Back when I was visiting Japan, I got very accustomed to Japanese greetings when I met up with friends over there, so when I met her mom the instinct immediately came back to me. She was an incredibly nice and polite person and we had a full conversation about my major and future plans, etc. I looked back at my crush, apparently wide-eyed for me speaking Japanese to her mom, and I decided to excuse myself so that she could have some family time. Later in the day she texted me that she didn't know I speak Japanese, and I replied, well, you never asked. This was apparently the worst response I could have given because she got very angry. I didn't think this would be a huge deal, but I guess it did reveal that I understood what she was saying when she talked about her feelings for me to her mom over the phone. She ended up getting very upset about hiding an important detail from her, which I didn't think would make her so angry at me. She felt betrayed that I kept a secret like this from her for so long, and I tried to apologize. But she doesn't want to speak to me right now, and I feel like I just blew my chances. Do I say sorry, or let it just cool off? I don't feel like I did anything wrong, as I feel like me being able to understand Japanese shouldn't be a huge deal, but she's still upset with me and doesn't want to talk. Have you ever found a dead body? When I was in a pub on Long Island, I went to use the restrooms. When I was in the stall, I saw writing on the door that said, "Follow the arrows." I looked around, but I didn't see any arrows. Whatever, I didn't think about it. Then, about a month after that, I'm back in the same place, use the restroom to wash my hands before I tear into some buffalo wings. They were out of paper towels, and not wanting to touch the restroom door with my hands, I tried to open it with my elbows. This was a clumsy process, and resulted in my bumping a light switch with my elbow. The room went completely dark. Or did it? On the ceiling I notice a trail of glow-in-the-dark arrows painted onto the ceiling. They're very, very faded. Looks like they'd been there for quite a while. They led out the door. Now I had totally forgotten about graffiti I had read a month ago, so I didn't really think about those arrows at all. I just pulled my sleeve over my wet hand, used it to flip the switch back on, and opened the door. I went back to my table with some buddies and we chowed down on some excellent wings. It wasn't until the end of the evening when my brain, out of nowhere, remembered the follow the arrows graffiti in the stall. I excused myself from the table, just to check that it was this stall where I saw the writing. It was. Now I had a mystery. I wanted to follow the arrows, but I couldn't. After I left the restroom, the ambient light was so bright that the arrows were invisible. I told my friends about the arrows, and I asked the bartender about it. He knew about the graffiti but had never seen the glow-in-the-dark arrows. After about 15 minutes of pouring drinks, he took a minute to go check it out. He didn't seem that impressed. I asked him if we could stay after closing and turn off all the lights to see where it went. He said yes. Flash forward 2 hours. The bartender and some of the waitresses are all standing around in the dark of the bar, looking at little faded arrows that make a trail from the restroom out to the front door. We step outside, but the trail is dead. The streetlights outside make the faded glow-in-the-dark arrows impossible to see, if they were even there at all. 3 days later, I'm in geology at my college, when I noticed the display of exotic minerals that the department has in a display case. Inside the case is a small, handheld black light used by rockhounds to find and observe glow-in-the-dark minerals. After the class, I asked the professor if I can borrow it. He says yes, but that if I break it I owe the department $45. Flash forward 9 hours. I drag my buddies back to the bar. We have some more drinks and awesome buffalo wings. When we're done gorging ourselves it is already dark outside. I went to the bathroom and tested my black light on some of the painted arrows. It worked like a charm. They glowed incredibly brightly, and even with the lights on they were fairly visible. I went back to the table. We pay our tab, and step onto the street. My friends stood around me, trying to look cool, while I was geeking out with my black light searching for invisible arrows on the ground. I found one. I followed the arrow, keeping my black light inches from the ground, waving it back and forth. 5 feet away I found another arrow. Then another, and another still. I was following these arrows down a sidewalk for about 2 blocks. My friends finally loosened up and started speculating on where the hell these arrows were taking us. Finally I got to an arrow pointing us in a new direction. It was a driveway leading to an empty commercial lot of some kind. The lot was surrounded by cyclone fences with aluminum siding. We couldn't see what was inside. The arrows led us around the fence and wall to a gate. I saw a lot of glow-in-the-dark paint under my light, and it took me a few seconds and some swinging of the light to realize we were looking at a giant arrow pointing inside the fence. I guess I should introduce you to my friends now. One was Jeff, one was Dave. Jeff pushed on the gate. It was locked and it rattled terribly in the dark. Dave looked uncomfortable. He took a deep breath, and before he could say what I'm certain he was about to say, "Hey guys, let's just go home." I cut him off. I say we hop this baby. Jeff didn't even say anything before he leapt against the gate, getting a firm handhold at the top. Ungracefully, but successfully, he pulled himself to an uncomfortable straddle on top of the gate. I followed suit, leaping at the gate. I didn't reach the top on my first attempt. I put the black light in my pocket and took a running leap at the gate. I got a firm handhold, but I could feel the metal digging into my skin. I made a mental note to get a tetanus shot when this was all over. Jeff helped me up from the top while Dave pushed my legs from underneath. Dave followed next with surprising ease. From our perch on the gate, we could see that the fence surrounded what looked like an old parking lot. Grass and other green things sprang up from the ancient, crumbled asphalt. Immediately below us, on the other side of the fence, was nothing but inky blackness from the shadow cast by the gate from a nearby street lamp. I pulled my black light from my pocket, but from this height, it was useless. To my surprise, Dave was the first one to slide down into the dark. He slid down the fence as low as possible before letting go and taking the final plunge. We heard him stumble, curse quietly, and the stand. "It's okay," he said, "I can see a little. It's just asphalt." Jeff and I dropped down from the fence. I didn't see exactly what happened, but after a lot of cursing, Jeff announced to us that he had busted his knee. After a minute of silent deliberation, he decided we should soldier on. I pulled out my light and quickly found an arrow. We followed a new trail slowly, and it quickly became clear that we were being led to a small shack in the middle of the parking lot. "I know what this is," said Dave. I think this all used to be a drive-in movie theater. I think that is the concession stand. Jeff and I agreed that this was a pretty good theory. We walked to the building, and as we got closer, saw that it was boarded up. But the shape of it, and its enormous plyboard-covered windows made us think that Dave was probably right. Jeff pulled out a cell phone and held it high above his head. At first I couldn't figure out why, then it became clear that he was using it as a flashlight to illuminate some faded lettering on the wall. We couldn't really see it, but we decided it probably said popcorn. I held up my black light. It glowed purple and bright, but didn't help us read the lettering any better than Jeff's phone had. I scanned the ground for more arrows and found none. Dave shrugged. So, what? The arrows used to lure people to buy popcorn? Looks like, Jeff said. We walked around the building until we came to a door in the back. It was secured by an old combination padlock. My black light hung from a tie on my wrist. I thought I had shut it off now that our mystery was solved, but out of the corner of my eye I caught a glimpse of glowing paint. I aimed my light at it. Whoa, said Dave. Maybe we all said it. We were thinking it. There on the door, in sharp, new glowing paint was scrawled 1356. Holding the black light close, we quickly rotated the wheels on the lock. Jeff pulled it open with a satisfying click. Pulling the padlock aside, we pushed on the old door. It creaked ominously, and got stuck when it was about a third of the way open. Jeff kicked his foot around the inside and moved an obstruction with thud. The door opened halfway now, and Jeff peeked inside. I can't see anything, he said. I peeked inside the door, shining my black light. It was useless. I cursed myself for not bringing a real flashlight. A black light and a cell phone were not enough to explore in there. It's useless, I said, as I pulled back from the door. Dave took his turn peering in. Just as I was about to suggest we head back to return another day, I heard a click, and a dim light appeared within the building. Holy shit, said Dave. I flipped the light switch, but I never thought in a million years that it would work. Jeff said, yeah, this place looks like it's been out of use for like 30 years, at least. Look at this parking lot. There are trees in it. Someone's still paying the bills, I said, and pushed on Dave to get him headed into the building. We walked in, and saw a surprisingly clean concession stand interior. There was thin coating of that strange sort of dust that accumulates in the absence of people. The sort of dust you would expect to find in an ancient tomb. The shelves were empty, and a cabinet stood on the far side of the room, doors closed. Dave walked to it and opened it cautiously. Holy, goat fucker, he said. He always had an interesting way with words. I looked past him to see what had impressed him. Jesus, I agreed. We were looking at shelves and shelves packed with candy boxes. But not just any candy boxes, really old stuff. I recognized Cracker Jacks and Hershey's, but the labels were ancient. I dropped my black light on the floor and grabbed excitedly for a giant box of Necco wafers. This has to be worth something, I said. Before I could examine further, Jeff said, dudes, check this out. He was standing over a hatch in the floor. He'd pulled it up and was peering into the dark. Maybe there's another light down there? He bounded down a set of steps into the cellar. Dave and I followed close behind, trying to find a switch along the way. If I hadn't been in such a hurry to keep up with Jeff, I might have noticed that the black light I had dropped was illuminating some more glowing paint. And if I had noticed that, I might also have noticed that the paint that made an arrow was pointing directly towards this basement hatch. And if I had noticed that, it might have given me pause. But I did not notice these things. I was halfway to the bottom of the stairs when I heard a click. My eyes were immediately drawn to a glow in the corner of the basement. Jeff said, found it. We walked toward the light, bumping into empty shelves and some strange debris along the way. Canvas bags, like sacks of potatoes. They were covered in dust. I was more concerned with the shelf under the light. It held what I recognized as old film canisters. Truly these were treasure. We hurried over, reading the titles. Lots of things with monsters. Dracula Returns, Night of the Wolf People, great stuff. But I didn't recognize any of the titles. We all jumped when we heard it. There was a whirring sound, very loud, coming from near the stairs. It sounded somehow familiar, like a garbage disposal or some electric power tool. We saw the shadows changing from the light in the hatchway. We had nearly knocked over the shelf with the film reels. I had involuntarily thrown my hands over my ears. Dave and Jeff had comical, frightened expressions on their faces. I probably looked the same. At last the sound stopped. We stood still for a moment, our hearts beating hard in our chests. Then, as if awakening from a trance, we all ran over to the hatch to investigate. My mind could not comprehend what it saw. Was the ceiling upstairs covered in black stripes? No. My eyes finally understood. The hatch we had just come down moments ago was now blocked by iron bars. Jeff bolted up the stairs as far as he could, grasping the iron bars in his hands and pushing against them violently. But his shaking and jarring only served to rattle the creaky wooden staircase. Dave stood there, pale and dumb, staring at the bars, his mind trying to comprehend this impossible situation. I walked to the back of the stairs and saw the motorized contraption attached to iron bars. It was so dark though, that I could barely make it out. I reached for my black light, realizing that I had left it upstairs. Jeff, get over here. I barked. Jeff stood next to me and looked at the contraption. He held up his cell phone, and in the phone's dim light we saw a giant metal box that had been cleverly mounted to the basement ceiling. If there were a way to access this device, we could not see it. Dave gasped suddenly, and ran to one of the potato sacks I'd seen on the floor. He dragged it into the light, worked to untie it. When he was done, I saw him look into the bag and make a sound I'd never heard before, something between a scream and a moan. He started hyperventilating. Jeff and I ran over to him. Jeff said some comforting words to Dave while I looked into the bag. At first I couldn't tell what I was looking at. For some reason I thought it was tree roots or some sort of stew vegetables. Then I saw the hair. I vomited violently, away from the others. I tried to speak, but vomited again. Throat raw, I said to Jeff, your phone. Call the police, call them now. I put my hand on Dave's shoulder. Dave, who was slowly rocking back and forth like a baby. He was trying to slow down his breathing, but it was coming quickly in gasping rasps. I heard Jeff get through to someone on the phone. He explained where the bar was, and how we had walked several blocks to a parking lot with a fence around it. He explained the concession stand, and the basement and the locking iron bars. They wanted him to stay on the line. I asked him for the phone. Look, I said, there are dead bodies in bags down here. I looked around. Dozens of them. It was a woman on the other end. She said, just stay calm. I want you to just stay online with me, and give me your names. We told her who we were, and answered her checklist of questions. I knew we should conserve the phone batteries, but she was our lifeline out of this crazy situation. After we'd answered all her questions, she said, you know, making prank calls to emergency rescue services is a very serious crime. My blood turned cold. She thought we were joking. My throat tightened. As calmly as I could, I croaked, ma'am, I swear to you, I have never been more serious in my life. Please send someone down here. If we're lying, you can arrest us. Just send someone, please. Young man, she said, don't you have better things to do on a school night? I heard a click, then nothing. I hung up the phone. She didn't believe us. Dave said, give me the phone. I noticed he had calmed down significantly. I saw him dial the operator. In a moment he spoke. Calmly he said, operator, I'd like to speak to New Hyde Park Police, please. Yes, it is an emergency. No, I don't want 911 or dispatch. I want the police department. There was a moment's silence. Then he spoke in a deep voice. Yes, hello officer. I'd like to report some kids in an abandoned building. They were throwing bottles and wrecking the place. I saw them drag a little girl in there into the basement. It sounds awful bad. Just awful bad. Someone needs to hurry before they hurt that little girl. Dave, absolutely brilliant Dave. I could have kissed him. He gave the officer the location of the lot and the description. It was perfect. After answering some more the officer's questions, he begged her once again to hurry. But already I heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. Dave hung up the phone. That was too fast, he said. Maybe the 911 lady actually sent someone? To arrest us maybe? I heard a car door open, then close, then there were heavy steps. Jeff ran to the barred hatch. We're down here. Help. Please, we're down here. The footsteps were slow and deliberate overhead. I saw a pair of work boots and dirty blue jeans appear at the top of the stairs. Jeff stepped clumsily backwards down the stairs. He looked pale. I moved to the base of the stairs by his side, and looked up. He was a bear of a man. Just intimidatingly large. He was smoking a cigarette. He stared at us without really seeing us, as if we were just shirts on a hanger and he was trying to decide which one to wear. Excuse me, I said. But he walked away as if he hadn't heard me. Hey! Hey! I screamed as I ran up the stairs to the bars, but I could think of nothing else to say. He walked outside. We heard him get something heavy out of his vehicle. Then we heard him dragging it inside. Whatever it was, he set it down with a thump. There was some fussing about upstairs, and then we saw plastic tarp rolled across the iron bars. Moments later, the sound of duct tape. The hatch was closed, and we were alone listening to the sounds of the man working. Working, we were sure, on something evil. The sort of evil that is rarely seen. The sort of evil that you don't get to tell anyone about later on. We heard a hissing sound, high-pitched and steady. I was confused, so was Jeff. Gas, said Dave. I think he's pumping some sort of gas in here. We ran around looking for the source, but we were lightheaded within minutes. I heard Jeff collapse in the far corner. Dave rushed over and tried to pull him over to me. Dave fell 10 feet away from me, breathing shallowly, unconscious but not dead. I heard sirens in the distance, and then there was nothing. When I awoke, I realized two things about my face. The first thing was that it hurt a lot. The second thing was that it was on a concrete floor. I tried to sit upright, but as I pushed myself from the floor, my arms gave out on me. I was so weak. My head weighed 100 pounds. I heard grunting and coughing behind me. Startled, I rolled over and saw Dave as he began to come around. There was a moment of confusion as I looked around the dusty room. Then it all snapped back in place. Adrenaline pumping. My muscles found new strength. I grabbed Dave's collar. Dave, we've got to get the... I stopped mid-sentence as I heard voices upstairs. The first voice said, excuse me sir, we've had reports of a disturbance out here. Have you heard anything unusual? There was very long pause, and a baritone voice said, yes sir, officer. There were some kids in this place making a hell of a racket. I came over here to clear them out. The police officer asked, you own this property? But the man didn't get a chance to answer because I started screaming. Dave joined me. Jeff stirred, but I was too busy running up the stairs and pounding on the hatch to pay him any attention. Dave grabbed a couple of metal film canisters and smashed them together, making an unholy racket. If any more dialogue was exchanged upstairs, we didn't hear it. What we did hear was the scuffle that ensued. The men upstairs were slamming each other into the walls. One of them fell to the floor. There was a heavy thud, a gunshot, and then another. Finally we heard a second body slump to the floor. We all stayed silent for a moment, praying the police officer was triumphant. We heard nothing. Officer? I shouted through the hatch.
So when I was in elementary school, we actually got St. Patrick's Day banned at our school. Let me tell you how. So first of all, my school was poor. Okay, first of all, so they did not go all out on holidays like that. They would do like the major ones, but that was like about it. But they would go all out for St. Patrick's Day for whatever reason. They would invite anybody who would come. Police, fire department, military, anybody who would come, right? And they would have them set up in the field, and it would just be a phenomenal day. But there was a leprechaun that would go around every single year and like just do little mischief things, right? And this leprechaun was notorious for literally never being caught by a single kid in the school since the school's been built, right? So this was like a thing at our school, right? Every kid got involved. So the leprechaun would go around the school and they would like change out the paper towels to be rainbow colored. They would change out the soap to be multicolored as well. Like when I say they would go all out for St. Patrick's Day, they really would. They would go around and leave little clues around the school on construction paper cutouts of 4-leaf clovers, and they would leave them all around the school in different classrooms so the kids could go around, and it was like a little scavenger hunt. But we took it too far this particular year. When I was in first grade, and my first grade class literally went into our classroom, and the leprechaun, tossed a couple things around, knocked down some posters, flipped some chairs, and knocked over some desks with all the mischief. So when me and all the other first graders walked into our classroom and we saw the destruction, we went feral. We started flipping tables and desks, trying to find the little clues that they would leave around. And they would like put it in somewhere that was like an obvious place for a little kid to find. No, we did not take the goddamn hint. We started tearing up the classroom. We were lifting up the magic rug that we would have at story time. We were like tearing up the classroom. It got to the point where we like ran. Kids started running out of the classroom and we're banging on other classroom doors like, did you find the leprechaun? Is he in there? We have to find him this year. We were determined. At this point, the teachers cannot stop us. And like in kid fashion mob mentality, we're going from classroom to classroom, recruiting kids to find this leprechaun. When I tell you we were tearing up the school simultaneously while we're looking for this leprechaun, we're looking for the clues, and the clues that they would leave was like little leprechaun prints, 4-leaf clovers everywhere, rainbows everywhere. We started ripping the dispensers off of the walls, the paper towel dispensers off the walls. Teachers were getting mad, and it was getting to the point where nobody was being able to like reel us in, so the principal got involved. And when I tell you, when the principal got involved, she tried to make an announcement on like the announcements. When I tell you, none of us was hearing any of that. None of us heard the announcement at all. We were too busy, tearing up the school. I say we're tearing it up. We were throwing desks around, chairs around, flipping up carpets, trying to find footprints. We were really in this, right? We were making our way to the cafeteria until the principal beat us to the cafeteria and was like at the doors. It was like, stop! What is wrong with you? You guys have more decorum than this. She didn't say that, but she was like, I am so disappointed in you. That cut deep because we all really respected our principal. Like, she was lit. Like, she was really fun. She made school a good time. So now, us as a mob, when we're thinking about it, we're like, dang, maybe we did go a little too far. She put us on, like, in-school suspension, so the entire school couldn't go outside and play for, like, a solid week. And then she emailed, like, every parent in the school and was like, yo, St. Patrick's Day is canceled until further notice. Because of your kids destroying the school. So yeah, we got it taken away because we didn't know how to act right.
My sister told me to give her my baby, and I thought that was the end of it. I, 28F, am currently 19 weeks pregnant. My partner, 29M, and I are very excited, as this is our first baby and we have been trying for a few months. We announced the pregnancy a month ago at a dinner party we hosted, and everyone seemed surprised and overjoyed. My sister, 35F, who I will call K, immediately burst into tears and asked me how I could do this to her. I stared at her, and asked what? She started ranting, saying that I always got everything I wanted, which is not true. I worked hard for all that I have, and that she knew I got pregnant just so I could rub her infertility in her face. She screamed at me for 5 minutes about how I didn't deserve to be a mother and she should be the one pregnant right now. My parents left with her soon after, and the party was basically over. I was really disturbed by my sister's reaction, because we had been pretty close before, and she had never done anything like this. Kay called me the next day, apologizing for how she acted at my announcement and asked if we could meet up for coffee. I accepted. We met up and she pretended as if nothing had happened. Then she started a big speech about her infertility, how heartbreaking it is to be growing life inside of her, just to lose it, and how she had always wanted children of her own. She then proceeded to ask me if I could consider getting an abortion, to make things fair, or letting her adopt my baby. I stared at her and asked if she was serious. Kay said she was. I just dropped my part of the bill on the table and left. L, Kay's husband, texted me a rant that night about how I'd made Kay cry, and how all they wanted was to be parents, and that this meant so much to them, and I owed them for being more successful than them. My partner and I invested many years into our jobs, and we have worked very hard to earn what we earn now. I told them that my partner and I had been hoping for kids too and that I was not giving up my baby. He hung up. She later sent me a long letter, 4 pages, about how she had always wanted to be a mother, and could I consider either abortion or letting her adopt my baby, how I should care about my older sister's happiness, how she would make a better mom, how the oldest kid should have the first grandchild, and how I could always just have another baby since it was so easy for me to conceive. After that, she quieted down some, and I thought we were done with this, except it wasn't. She had posted my sonogram on her FB, and captioned it, "Elle and I are expecting. We can't wait to meet our little princess." I was seeing red. I texted her and demanded she take the post down. No reply. I texted Elle. No reply. So I called my mother and told her what happened. She was able to make Kay take the post down, luckily enough. Kay has called me petty for calling my mom and has continued to demand I give up my baby. I sent her a letter explaining that I had had enough of her nonsense. I am keeping my baby, and that I recommend she get some help. I added that if she continues, I will not hesitate to call 999. This weekend, however, was the absolute last straw. My mom and dad have the spare key to my house, and while she was over at their house for brunch, she took the key. While my partner and I were at work, she broke into our house and stole all the clothing, blankets, nappies, bottles, and pretty much any other item we had bought for the baby, except furniture. It was later returned after my mom found it in her car. I called 999, but they told me I couldn't do anything because I had no proof and because it was all returned. My partner and I are moving in April, but I'm still scared my sister will find out where we live and take my child. I get that she's upset and jealous, due to her infertility, but that shouldn't mean I have to give up my baby. My parents know about this, and they have been doing their best to get her some help. She doesn't want to adopt, because she wants a child that's her own flesh and blood. I'm due in August, and the stress she's causing cannot and will not be good for me or the baby. My partner is looking into a cease and desist letter. Is there anything else I should do or say? I'm scared for my baby.
I don't know. I just feel like people never got beat up before, and it shows. If you know you can't wear white to my wedding, why the fuck would you wear cream? Be on time. You will not be making a grand entrance on my day, hoochie. I don't give a fuck about your good news, not at my wedding. Why you want to propose at my event? You pull up in cream or any of them colors in the white family, my sisters are going to jump you. Don't tell me nothing about that pregnancy. I don't care if you're 50 and you finally made it to your 3rd trimester. Stop trying to steal my shine. And no phones during my ceremony. You're not about to have me on the internet looking crazy. I paid good money for this event. A videographer or a photographer will take our pictures and videos and email it to you. Don't want you to think that I'm not happy that you beat your terminal illness. I always knew you was gonna beat it because obviously I prayed about it. But again, time and place. And as cute as the flower girl and ring bearer is, they got to get the fuck out once they make their way down the aisle. Flower girl barely made it down the aisle with the flowers. I don't want no kids there. They are fun suckers, okay? I want you dirty whining and drinking. We ain't wasting no champagne making toast to anybody that ain't me. Y'all not gonna make me look back and hate my pictures, so there will be a dress code enforced. Ladies, get them dresses to them cankles, and men get them big Steve Harvey suits tailored. I feel like you about to cause any type of scene. Security's carrying you out, kicking and screaming like the tyrant you are. If my husband doesn't cry by the time I get to the end of the aisle, I have no choice but to turn around and do it again. If you feel like you're gonna cut my cake because you feel like I'm taking too long, then be prepared to be stomped up by my cousin that wears black uptowns. For those who can't hold liquor, you're gonna be given special wristbands and your drink's gonna be watered down. Anyways, I'm cute. Bye.